believe we're live. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. I'm kind of just speaking into the void at the moment. It's like we've got 30 or so viewers on the stream right now. First time doing a YouTube live stream, so get me pumped up with some comments. Say hello to each other. I'm going to wait a couple minutes to make sure that everybody arrives before we get started. You may notice that there's a chat in the sidebar if you guys want to ask some questions. I've seen a couple already. I'm going to probably leave most of the questions to the end so that we can get them all answered on the stream and recorded for people to review later. I don't know that the chat itself is saved or not, so I'm going to answer them live if I can. Let me know if you can hear the kids in the background. No number of requests. We're going to keep them from not running around back and forth to find me. It's certainly a lot less climactic than meeting everybody down in the Vets Hall. Getting to meet everybody again for the first time each year. Now I'm just sitting at my desk by myself. We'll meet each other soon enough. I need to play some theme music or something next time. I'm gonna give everybody 2 more minutes. See, Debbie's asking how many teams we've got returning. I've got numbers for you. I'll be in one of the slides. I'm going to say this is one of the things I'm most looking forward to after things start opening back up. So I'm real excited to be here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. This is normally when I'd be up in front of the room, getting everybody's attention, getting people to sit down, but you're probably sitting there quietly waiting. So I don't have to do that so much. I've got the captive audience now. So let's get started. It's been a while. We haven't played bocce in a long time. With the 2020 season canceled, just one season means we haven't played bocce in almost 2 years. And so it's feeling like a distant memory almost at this point. So going into a Capo meeting, something normally would be just 6 months ago, I would have announced the 2019 champions. But if you remember all the way back to 2019, the Infernos were our champs. We give some shout outs to Bocce Questo and Forget Bocce were 2nd and 3rd place. That's right, we made it into the top once again. I also want to point out that we've got some familiar faces on the board. We haven't really made any changes for a while. There hasn't been a whole lot for us to do. We're waiting for Bocce to get started again. I'm still your president at the moment, and Greg is your vice president. Begrudgingly, he's been doing this for a long time, so thanks again for taking the VP seat for us. John's their treasurer, and then I'm your secretary at the moment, just because mostly it's just taking notes in meetings, which kind of not much to do there. We've got Ron, Scott, have been on the board of directors for a long time. Zach is returning. Steve, Beth, and Lynn are also on board. We are always looking for new board members, and so if you know anybody who's interested in getting involved, please drop us a line. Our email, as always, is info@beniciabocce.org. Please let us know. There's a lot of people on here who are probably looking to retire, so we could use some help. Moving along, we've got a quick note on financials. It should be known that we have about $8,000 in the bank at the moment. And despite not having a year of revenue from 2020, we've still been able to make our loan payments. Just want to make a call on that in case anybody was wondering. So we're doing well. It's nice that we had a buffer to fall back on for 2020. So I'm just going to point that out. Moving along, we'll talk about registration. We had a very healthy registration compared to what might have been. We had 55 teams registered for this season in 2021, 554 players. 50 teams are returning. We had 2 teams that split off from other teams. There's irritable bowel syndrome, which I am giving my award to the best new name. We've got Beach and Chong as another split team. And we got 3 new teams I'd like to welcome. Boccelicious, Unusually Underhanded, and Benicia Ballbreakers. So welcome. We're glad to have you. It's probably worth getting right into the big change is going to be this year, and hopefully for only this year, the COVID-19 restrictions. I've sent out details about all of this in email and put it up on the website, put it up on Facebook, and I hope that everybody has reviewed that. But I want to go over here again and talk through exactly what we mean by them and potentially do any explanation and answer any questions there at the end of the slideshow to make sure everybody understands what we're doing for the year. We're trying to keep it light-handed but also conservative with the hope that as the environment changes, we'll be able to relax some of these restrictions as time moves on, and particularly some of the distancing. Let me just get right into it. First of all, we're going to be doing social distancing, obviously. So 6 feet away from people not in your core pod, people in your own households. I want to quickly ask that Capos, I'm going to need your help on this. This is one of the easy rules to accidentally break. And because we don't have any kind of referees or representation out on the courts, we're going to really rely on you guys to keep everybody mindful of the distance issues down on the courts. One of the big things that we've done in the opening of the season, that we're only going to play 2 courts instead of 4. It can get really crowded down there with 4 courts full of everybody playing full teams. So playing just courts 2 and 4 give us the space so that we're not butting up against other matches, while plenty of space for people to stretch out around the court and be able to handle the 6-foot distances. We're hoping that as the summer moves on, some of this won't be as necessary and we can open up more courts. But right now we're going to start off with 2. Masks. So we're going to need to ask everybody to be masked up down on the courts. Everyone playing or not will need to be masked up. We're making one exception that you can remove your mask if you're eating and drinking, but we're going to make a specific caveat that if you're eating and drinking and then remove your mask, you have to remain seated. And so this is kind of a special rule, mostly because we don't have anybody down there to make a call on a subjective issue. If somebody's eating and drinking and walking around, we decided we're just going to make it very clear and obvious. If your mask is off and you're eating and drinking, remain seated. It'll be very cut and dry and objectively measured whether or not you're following the regulations. This is going to be another time when I'm going to ask Capos to make sure that people remember to follow the rules, because it's going to be very easy to stand up from your seated position and forget to put on your mask. And so Capos are going to have to kind of be our eyes on the ground on this sort of thing. So again, remain seated while you're eating and drinking if you're going to have your mask off for doing so. Otherwise, masks up all over the place. The sanitation. So what we've done is we put some stations, or we've purchased some stations, and we're going to have a pump for hand sanitizer at the end of each of the courts. So 4 sanitation stations for the 2 courts at the moment. And we've got some minor procedures for when to sanitize. Obviously, when the home team gets there and starts to prep the courts, sanitize your hands before using all the shared equipment to get the rollers out there and the brooms and all the rest for the court prep. And then for during matches, we ask that you sanitize your hands prior to entering the court for rolling balls in each match. One of the things we're going to do to make this a little more streamlined is that we're going to put an extra set of balls on the courts for each match. So normally we'd have 4 balls for each team that we would share between the ends of the courts. Instead, we're going to have 4 balls for each team at each end. And so ultimately what that means is that each player will have 2 dedicated bocce balls that they'll be able to roll for the entire match. So sanitize before you touch the balls. And then when you roll them down the court, instead of rolling them out to your partners, you're going to roll them back to your side for reuse on your next turn. It's going to be easy for us to do this because we've got the 2 courts instead of 4 at the moment. And so we'll be able to use the balls we wouldn't otherwise have in use for this purpose. It should be easy to kind of keep an eye on which ones are yours. There are distinguishing marks on the balls themselves so that you would know between you and your partner which ones are yours. But this is going to make it easier for us to have shared surfaces left less often, right? And so sanitizing before you prep the courts, sanitizing before your round when you're using your balls on the court. And I'm sure there might be some questions about that, but I'm going to roll through some of these restrictions, and then I'll go through the questions in the chat. Measuring. Normally, when measuring is happening, the 2 capos or 2 teammates from opposite teams will get down there and measure together. We're going to ask that you measure independently. So you got to keep the distancing rule in mind. When you're measuring, still stay 6 feet away from others. If somebody wants to, if both teams want to measure it, just do it independently at separate times. And then sanitize your hands before using the measuring tape. And then on scorekeeping, normally what we have on the courts is we've got the clipboards with the paper, and we're keeping score on. Oftentimes we're going to be passing those back and forth between different folks to take score and keep track of it. We're going to ask that there's going to be one scorekeeper for the match, and we'd like the capos to, when they kick off the beginning of the match, they're going to designate one person, and they'll keep score for the entire duration of the 3 games. And then try to sanitize your hands before handling the clipboard or passing it off for a signature at the end. And then we're still going to have the same score sheet deposit process to drop it in the Dropbox. And then health checks. So what we're asking is very simple. Have everybody who comes down to the courts to do a quick health check for themselves. If you have a fever of over 100.4 degrees or a cough, then just stay home. It's going to be on everybody to perform these health checks on themselves so we can keep everybody down there. There's no way that we're going to be able to proactively measure folks on the courts ourselves, so it's going to be a self-performed health check. Special waivers. So we've got a waiver drafted up, and we're putting this together the last week or 2. We have the standard waiver that has gone out to all players to get signatures. We're going to have a special waiver, second waiver, asking everybody to make a commitment to the special restrictions we have for the year. I haven't sent those out yet. I'm going to try to get those out quickly so that you can get them circulated and make sure that your team is still signed off on that process. Ultimately, it's going to be that commitment to these regulations and the cooperation of everybody involved and the help that I get from you capos to remind everybody of the simple regulations we have so that we don't, slide into a process where we have to deal with, disputes or something like that. Ultimately, the commitment's going to get us successfully through the season, and we all want to be down there playing. So help me out on that point there. At this point, those are the main bullet points of our COVID restrictions. I've outlined those out in the email, and you can get them online on the website. I'm going to look through the questions we got here. Let's see. Have we reviewed the CDC rules for groups more than 3 households together? I'm not sure what you mean, Rick, in particular. We've gone over our own restrictions against play in sports of like ours. Ours is a non-contact, low stress outdoor activity. Believe that we are able to play in the purple tier. We've compared our restrictions against several other bocce groups and federation rules in local and national level, and find that we're kind of in line with a lot of those. A lot of what we are putting in place here, it goes above and beyond what might be the bare minimum, but we as the board have agreed that most of this makes sense for our particular league, and in particular. It comes down to it, we have a lot of folks that are down there to mingle and have fun, and so we want to put some particularly distance and masks rules in, so make sure that everybody can kind of stay safe at the moment. Let me know if you want to make any clarifications on that, Rick. Scoreboards. It might be we didn't really get into that, but I expect that's probably one scorekeeper rule for the scoreboards would make sense there too. Let's have somebody designated to move the pegs and sanitize before they touch those, as well as part of the court prep, sanitize when you're pulling those out of the sheds. Can scorekeeping be shared between spouses? Certainly, that makes sense. I mean, there's going to be a lot of common sense rules around people who are potted up together. Similarly to measuring, if you and your spouse one person holds the tape, another person looks over the ball, that makes sense to me. What we're just asking is that people cross pods are staying distanced. Let's see here. And scorekeeping, well, with the combination, what is the combination for locker? Okay, I've got that in a slide coming up for the sheds. And when you say each team will be measuring independently, I assume you mean 2 members from the same team will hold the opposite end of the tape, right? They don't mean just one person, correct? Well, here's the deal: is we don't want to keep the distancing in place, and as part of this, we're going to have to play by ear a little bit. If the measurement is one of those 15-foot measurements, then somebody grabs a tape and spreads it out, and somebody can hold it against the ball, another person does the measurement. What we just want to avoid is 2 people leaning down there and looking at the tape together and making a call about how many inches away it's measuring. If you want to do the measurements independently to see if you come up with the same number, that's great, but what we want to avoid is people getting their heads down together and looking at the tape at the same time, which would put them within feet of each other, right? And so that's the spirit of the rule. In practice, I think that we'll kind of figure it out on the courts, but we're looking to maintain that 6-foot distance for people outside your pod is the gist of that. Let me know if anybody wants any more clarifications. I do have a slide dedicated to Q&A at the end, and so we can go over any other questions or clarifications you might have. That's a wrap on our COVID restrictions. I'm going to move on to some details about the schedule. So our opening day is Sunday, April 25th, which is coming up in just 2 short weeks. We've kind of put a lot of this together quickly. Mostly because we wanted to make sure that we waited until late into the year to make a decision on a lot of this stuff, so we had the most information we could. So here we are at a Capo meeting 2 weeks out on the Sunday, April 25th. The playoffs, as usual, will be held after Labor Day, and we've got space on the courts until that last weekend of August to play through our season. Now, a point on having just 2 courts. So obviously that means half of the playing space available for the entire season. And one of the modifications we did to accommodate that was we usually have up to 9 teams per division, which produces some bye weeks, right? But with 2 courts pulled out, that means on average you're only going to be playing every other week for the summer. And so reducing it down to 8 teams gets rid of those buys and gets rid of the opportunity for somebody to not be able to play for multiple weeks at a time. Hopefully we're going to try to open up more courts if we're able to relax some of the restrictions and backfill as many games into the season as we can. But starting off with just 2 courts means there's going to be half as much play as we could do otherwise. And we're not going to have any special events or tournaments quite yet. We haven't had them scheduled. Usually we have a tournament in July or so, and we would usually have something more to do on opening day, as well as a end of year celebration. But we're going to forgo those this year. Stick with just the regular season play and the playoffs, which will happen as normal. Playoffs, if we're still playing on 2 courts, might extend a week or 2 longer than they usually do. But we're going to get through the standard same bracket size that we typically handle. Let's see here. How many games do you plan for each game to play? With 55 teams, 2 courts, the game's going to take longer than the guideline. Also, the 2 courts, also the games will take longer with the guideline enforcement. There might be extended play based on measurement in particular, which we might take longer than normal. I don't anticipate the matches taking a whole lot longer into the evenings. Of course, the main question in your comment there is on the number of games that we're playing. So yes, we're not going to be able to get as many games per team into the summer, but we're hoping that we can backfill if we can open up more courts down the line. As always, you can view your schedule for your team online. I wanted to give a quick demonstration here in case people haven't seen it. If you go on to the Benicia Bocce League schedule, you can pull down and find any night of the week, and here's the full schedule for your division. You can also use this drop down to drill into a particular team, and you can take this particular page and view just your own team's schedule for the season, as well as drilling into and seeing results for any particular match that might have already happened. I want to also point out that it's possible to reschedule matches, and so if you are a capo of a team, you can go into the schedule and find one of your own matches, and if you're logged in in your capo account, you'll see a reschedule button. If need be, if your team realizes they're not able to play on that night, come in here and get their reschedule started, and that'll start an automatic process between you and the other capo to get it rescheduled to another match time. Let me know if you have any questions on that. I'm happy to answer questions either in chat or send us an email. I can walk you through that process as well. All right, here's some of the miscellaneous details, including the shed code everybody's waiting for. We got a shed code of 2468. It might have been the same code we used last time, or it may have been the 2020, I can't remember. That's the shed code will get you in for the season. Quick note, please don't go down there and try to get in a couple practice games quite yet. The city hasn't refreshed the shell, and the courts are likely in pretty bad shape at the moment. And so it's probably best just to get out there and get there early for your own matches to get in some practice if you can. I know we're all really itching to get down there on the courts, but they're not quite ready for us yet. Oh, presentation. Yeah, there's a shed code. All right. And then disputes, as always, if you are able to handle disputes down on the courts, that's ideal. We don't have referees down there to make calls, and so it usually comes down to people trying to be cordial on the courts. If the capos can't come to agreement, then you can send us an email at the board. One thing I do like to point out is that even if there is a dispute about a game, we ask that you continue play rather than ending a game at the moment. It might be that you didn't realize one of the rules, and I would hate for you to raise a dispute and find out that you were in the wrong, and then have it forfeited the game otherwise. And so, even if you have a dispute, please try to finish out your match. The standings, you can be found online, and we're going to continue to log those and keep them updated weekly. As well as the rules can be found online. I've got it in a format now that should be pretty mobile friendly. If you go to beniciabocce.org/rules, it'll pull up everything you need, and you should be able to search through any of the rules if you want to pull up a reference down on the courts, which is pretty handy. All right, and then one of the rules, one of the changes we made to the website in the past year, but it's worth mentioning again, is that teams are able to pull up contact info if they need to get in hold of another team that they're playing with. This requires logging in as a Capo. We wanted to provide just the minimal amount of access to online information like this. I don't necessarily want to publish people's email addresses on open web, so it's locked behind Capo address and so access. So if you're a Capo, you're able to go into a match, click on the other team, and you'll be able to pull up an email address for the other Capo if you need to get a hold of them for any reason. And then a couple other reminders. If you're the home team, please remember to arrive early so that you can get down there and prep the courts, and be very careful with equipment. We've had some issues in the past with our spray nozzle heads, which look pretty beefy and pretty hardy, but they get dropped on the courts on the concrete night after night, and we were going through having to replace those quite often. So try to be careful with our equipment, keep those lasting nice and long for ourselves. There's also a notice on rainouts. There's been a little bit of confusion on the past. The rainout process is that if it's cloudy and looks like it's might going to rain, we rely on the city to make a call on whether or not the courts are going to be closed due to rain. Oftentimes the city will make that call in the early afternoon, and so it might not be that you hear from us until 3 or 4 o'clock on the day of. But if you don't hear from us, then you should consider the match is still on and going to be played. If you get down there onto the courts and it's starting to rain, then by all means make a call with the other Capo. We just want to avoid people assuming that it's going to be raining and then not show up and then find out that it could have been played, which turns into a forfeit from the team that didn't appear. So I do have a note about rainouts on the website on our fact page if you want to review that process again. A couple questions in here. I'm going to read through these here in a second. One of the last points on this miscellaneous details is a general don't be a jerk. We're a very casual league down here. We do enjoy the competition, but we are also not sponsored by anybody necessarily. We're not pro players looking to be picked up by scouts. We're trying down there for the most part, trying to have fun. And because we don't have referees on the courts, we rely on everybody to play by the golden rule and try not to be a jerk on the court. Those are the main details. One of the main reasons I want to get you guys all online today is that I do want to have Q&A. If you have questions, feel free to ask them now into the live chat. If you have any that occur to you later, feel free to always reach out to us via email, info@beniciabocce.org. I'm going to read through some of these questions here. Let me find where I left off. Let's see. According to directive issued on April 6th, the California Department of Bocce is classified as an outdoor low-contact sport. Ron's explaining all this stuff in here. Maintain 6 feet distance and remain in a household pod in compliance with guidelines, right? If you choose to pass on this season because your team is concerned about safety, we'll be able to secure a spot for next season. All right, great. This is a point I really want to drive home. This year we are considering, we don't want to penalize anybody for not wanting to play this year. And so in the 2022 season, next season, registration priority will be based on 2019 team placements. So anybody who did not or decided not to play this year will in no way be impacted in your ability to play in 2022. So the 2022 registration based on 2019 priorities and what nights you're playing on and whether or not you were in the league. And then there will be preference given to anybody playing this year, 2021, over any brand new teams that show up for the first time in 2022. Let's see here. Yeah, and Rick, you're talking about whether or not we remain in certain tiers. I believe that bocce is classified available to be played in the purple tier, so we don't feel like we're any risk of slipping out of tiered ability to play at all in bocce. Mostly my fingers are crossed the hardest that we'll be able to move in the right direction so that we can open up a little bit more and get some more games down there on the courts. All right, so sequence of court preps. Yeah, I'll go over that real quick. And I believe I've got this in the rules as well. There's a section in the rules, court maintenance, and it talks about the responsibility of maintaining the courts. But when it comes down to it, here is the process to prep the courts. So step 1, pick up any debris. Step 2, use the large brooms to prepare the surface. There's a fairly rigorous or outlined way people pull those brooms. If you haven't done them before, it's probably a good idea to get down on the courts and watch one of the other teams prep. Mostly it's about trying to pull it down and back across the court so you don't make too much of a groove or a lane if you can. But this is step 2, is using the broom. So pick up debris, use the broom, and then afterwards use the nozzles to get a fine spray, get everything wet. And once that's dried, run over it with the roller, and then try to get the rollers out of the courts with the wedge, which is just a reminder that those rollers it's really easy to damage the edges of the playing surfaces, and then get everything back into the sheds. So sweep, pick up debris, use the broom, spray it down, and then roll it. I could probably come up with a cool acronym or something to remember that, but that's the process. And again, this is available in the rule book, which you can get to online. And Rick and Ron are having thoughts about guidelines some more, and those are all the questions we have online so far. I think 32 minutes is probably a smashing record of a Capo meeting. I really wish I would have been able to get down there and shake hands with everybody and meet all the new people and coming into our league. But this is what we got at the moment. And so I was happy to be able to get in front of you guys and talk through some of the regulations for this online. Reminder from John, the Capos will need to help getting all players' waivers before beginning a match. That's right. There is a process. If you log into the website onto your team, you can see who has signed waivers or not, as well as links to get a link to the waiver for folks who didn't have email addresses on your roster. Our system will automatically send an email to anybody who you provided an email address for. They'll send the waiver for them to get signed. But if they just decided they want to put their name on the roster, there's no way for us to get in touch with them. So it's up to the Capo. Log onto the website, look at the roster, get the individual waiver links and send them to their own players to get them signed. And for the instances where somebody might not have an email address, in those cases it's great to get in front of somebody to have them sign on their phone. Maybe you can give a link or give them your own phone to sign digitally. And the process is going to be similar for the special waivers that we're going to send out shortly as well. Hopefully we can get those out and signed quickly, especially now that everybody's kind of freshly remembered the process for the first waivers first time around. The second waivers have not gone out quite yet. I need to get that process started. I've been putting together the special schedules and the figuring out how to do live streams. So I've got my hands full, but I'm going to try to get those waivers out to you guys shortly. And then a note on the invoicing. Seemed to be going fairly smooth this year, that we were able to get registration up front without any payment up front, and then sending out invoices to everybody afterwards based on the number of team players you've had and all that. We do need to get you guys to pay your invoices before I believe I set a due date for today. I think most of people got their invoices paid, but we need to get those wrapped up pretty quickly before the start of the season. And then a quick note that if you are trying to make some changes to your roster, then you're going to need to pay your invoice first, so that if you remove somebody from your roster, I'm able to refund you the $10 per player for that. Went frankly pretty smooth. I'm considering using the invoice process in the future, so let me know if you preferred that method. I think it worked out pretty well. Let's see. Rick thinks I'm pretty awesome and that I'm great at doing presentations and stuff. I agree. I really hope we can make this work. I'm really itching to get down there and play outside with some friends and family. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that we're going to be able to pull this off. Has anybody else got any questions in here? It's very quiet in my office. Normally, I'd have a little bit of shuffling in the Capo meeting, but here I am by myself, talking to a screen. All right, I'm probably going to call it at this point. If you guys have more questions, please send me an email. I try to stay on top of that and get back to you guys as quickly as you can. All right, well, I'm going to shut down the stream. This will be recorded if you want to play back and see any particular information. I believe this is going to be saved on the YouTubes, and you can send it out to your players if you'd like to see how good looking I am or something like that. With that, I'm going to sign off. Talk to you later.